To start off with a 19mm socket, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then take the wheel off. If your wheel is stuck on like this one, go ahead and put on a lug nut for safety and then use a rubber mallet and tap it from the backside, but always hit the tire, not the rim. You don't want to damage the rim. Remove your lug nut and take the wheel off. Before I continue, I'm going to take a pry bar, put it in here, and wedge it between the pad and the rotor on the inside, and just pull. That'll compress the pistons a little bit and make it easier to remove the caliper. From the backside, remove these 2 bolts. They're 14mm and they hold the caliper onto the bracket. And when you remove the caliper, set it up on top of the brake rotor. You don't want it to hang on the brake hose, that'll damage it. Now you can remove your pads. And with an 18mm socket, remove these 2 bolts, and that holds the bracket onto the knuckle. Remove these bolts and take your bracket right off. So I have here a new caliper bracket. You still want to grease this area up. You don't want any rust building up in the future. And you do this on both sides. You don't need a lot of grease. You don't want it to squeeze out onto the rotor. Now you take your new anti-rattle clip and just press it on all the way. Make sure it is fully seated. Do the same to the other side. And now what you want to do, you want to take out the slider pins. You want to get enough grease up on this ridge here. That's where the boot seals up, and that's going to prevent water from making its way in. I like to put a little bit of extra grease inside the boot as a reserve of grease, basically. Not too much, just a little bit. Work it in there. Insert your freshly greased pin. Squeeze it down all the way. If for some reason it doesn't want to squeeze down all the way, it's most likely because there's air stuck in there, so squeeze it, press on it, and squeeze the boot. That's going to press out any excess air, and do the same to this one. Perfect. Now let's get this bracket onto the vehicle. Line up the 2 bolt holes, and I did clean up the threads on these bolts. If you want to install thread locker, go ahead, but definitely don't put any anti-seize or grease on them. All right, let's snug these up. 136 foot-pounds for both of these. Now before your caliper fully goes on, I'm going to take some grease, add it to these 3 little ears here. That's going to help the pads operate quietly and smoothly. You don't need a lot, just a little bit to coat it. And then you also want to put some on the outer ring of the pistons here for the same exact reason. And this is also, on top of that, going to prevent water from getting in here and rusting out your piston from the inside out. Go ahead and slide in your pads. I like to put the one with the wear indicator on the inner pad and on the bottom side. That way, as the rotor moves forward, it pulls on this and makes a noise, letting you know that your brakes are low. Now you can take the caliper, slide it up and over, start in the 2 caliper mounting bolts, and then we'll torque them to 20 foot-pounds. Go ahead and remove this Banjo bolt with the 2 crush washers that come with it. Perfect. From the old caliper, with an 11mm, remove this Banjo bolt. Fluid's going to start coming out, so make sure you have a collection bucket. And one of my crush washers already came off, which is perfect. Remove the old Banjo bolt with the remaining crush washer. Throw that away. Take your new bolt with one of the washers, put it through the hose, make sure it's going the right way, then put on the other washer and start it onto the caliper. And with an 11mm wrench, I'm going to tighten it up. Once it's bottomed out, I like to go about 1/4 to 1/3 of a turn. What that's going to do is crush those copper gaskets and make a seal on both ends of the Banjo bolt. Clean up the mess a little bit just to ensure that there are no leaks. Remove this cover here for the bleeder screw, and with a 10mm wrench, go ahead and open this up. Now we'll let gravity do its thing, pull the fluid down, push the air out, and once it's down to a steady trickle of fluid, we can perform a full manual brake bleed, which consists of having someone in the car pumping up the brake. Of course, check your master cylinder, make sure it's full. With pressure being held on the brake pedal, open up the bleeder screw, fluid and remaining air will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close the bleeder screw, and then repeat the process until there's no more air coming out of here. Okay, I have a steady trickle of fluid, so I'm going to go ahead and snug up this bleeder screw. Nice and tight, perfect. Clean up the mess. Reinstall the cap for the bleeder screw. Let's get the wheel on. Reinstall your wheel. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and torque them to 100 foot-pounds.